Hello and welcome to an ICMI20 special edition of Gender Matters with me, Elizabeth Hobson, and a very special guest. Martin Seager is a consultant clinical psychologist, mental health campaigner and activist with a particular interest in men's issues and male psychology. Since 2006, he has been consultant to the Central London Samaritans and was commissioned by the National Samaritans to write a review on the science of why talking helps and doesn't help people. Martin is a regular contributor to BBC radio broadcasts on mental health issues and has authored many articles and chapters in various journals and books on many areas of mental health, including men's issues. Last year, he co-edited the groundbreaking Palgrave Handbook of Male Psychology and Mental Health, an academic textbook that takes a fresh approach to fairly examining male psychology and exploring ways of supporting men. Martin was the first author in several chapters, including one titled Cognitive Distortion in Thinking About Gender Issues, Gamma Bias and the Gender Distortion Matrix, which presents a fantastically clear and useful thesis regarding how we interpret behaviours and vulnerabilities exhibited by men and women. You can find a video explaining gamma bias on YouTube, the link to which will be in the description. He's a member of the Male Psychology Network and has organised annual male psychology conferences with them since 2014, and even achieved the establishment of a male psychology section within the British Psychological Society. Well done. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. That's a very long introduction. You reminded me of things I'd forgotten about myself. I know, with it, going back to when I was a student, obviously everything was exams.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
you just do it all in one day, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other, in my opinion, you know, because the exam, obviously, it's stressful and stuff like that, but it's all over so quickly. You know, whereas when you're having to submit essays that are completely perfect and you know, have to reference everything and all of that, you know, it's equally difficult. But of course, the exams were particularly good for the boys, weren't they, and the young men?
I think that's true. There is a boys tend not to like to sort of just, they like to sort of just do it all at the last minute, and whereas girls kind of are happier with, on average, obviously, with sort of continual stuff. I mean, certainly for me personally, when I was a student, I just did all my revision the night before, crammed it all, did an essay or an exam, you know, an exam paper, and then just forgot about it. That's how I used to do it. So I was good at writing exam papers, so I was lucky. Whether that's my gender, was partly, I think, also just a kind of an approach to, you know, to something that's important, to risk. Guys have a different attitude to risk. Yeah. And they just kind of take the risk, and then it's do or die on the day sort of thing. Probably does suit men more than women, that kind of model of. Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm quite good at exams, and I think it's because I conscientiously read the question and can, you know, work out what it is they're asking from me. But I think, you know, the conscientiousness, which is generally higher in women, is what makes them kind of excel at the coursework type elements. Whereas, you know, like you say, the kind of risk taking and maybe the ability of men to focus. I suspect you get more focus from, you know, a young man sitting writing an exam, whereas girls have, you know, all this stuff going on in their heads. You know, they're thinking like, she's got a nice pair of shoes over there, and what am I doing later? And trying to keep their mind on the exam. I don't know.
I think evolutionary wise, definitely, you know, and obviously I'm a great believer in evolution, so hopefully most scientific people are. You know, that basically men and women do differ, and men are focusing on a task to the exclusion of everything else.
Yeah.
And sort of getting it done and not letting feelings get in the way, which is a disadvantage in some situations and an advantage in others. It's not like there's a good or a bad thing.
No. We need both.
Yeah, if you need someone to kind of take out some kind of in a war situation, you need someone to take out the enemies. That kind of style of thinking is probably better. A masculine style of thinking is better. So if you're a woman soldier, you're going to have to be in a masculine mode of thinking. Just as if you want to be a male therapist, which I obviously am, I've got to be quite good at the thoughtful empathy and tuning into people's feelings and trying to imagine outside the focus, go beyond it, and connect creatively to other. Having said that, you can't generalize too much, but yeah, anything risk-taking and task-focused, that masculine mindset is more relevant. And in sport, you see that all the time. They're teaching women footballers now to focus on just sticking the ball in the net, because to be aggressive and to focus on just the task and not let feelings get in the way of it. The best women footballers will be doing that.
Yeah, I think I tend to suspect that, the best women footballers will indeed, if you start scanning their brains, be showing more male a more male brain than the average woman.
That's what always gets me in this gender identity debate, is that people don't seem to have the imagination to think that biologically we're all on a spectrum.
Yeah.
So you could even end up with a female brain in a male body. It's quite possible. And transgender is obviously that, because there are people who have a male body and they've been socialized as male from the day one. And then when they're about 11 years old, they think, God, I'm a woman. That was not possible socially. And biologically, if your body was dictating that, that wouldn't be possible. But if biology includes the brain as well as when you're developing a child in the womb, there's a sequence of, every part of your development, body, organs, brain, sequence. You might well get a hit of testosterone or something.
I read in Tom Golden's book that something like 70% of boys are bathed, they get that testosterone kind of bath that happens at whatever point it does. I think there's several, isn't there?
Yeah.
But there's also 30% of girls who get it. And, boys who don't get it. So, yeah.
The gender is a spectrum, but it's a biological spectrum as well. And when people who are, you can quite obviously see, in people whose sexuality is quite obviously not their choice.
Yeah.
Their sexual interest is that of a female within a male. They're attracted to another male, but actually biologically they're male and happy to be so. Whereas for some people that might be their gender identity. Their whole gender identity is female, even though they look male. But for some people they're happy to be male, but they're just attracted to men.
Yeah.
Because their sexuality is female.
Yeah.
But there's only two genders, male and female, and you can mix them up.
Yeah.
I don't know why we get into such a complexity about it.
No.
You have masculine and femininity mixed. There's only 4 possible genders. You can be male, female, both, or neither. That's it. The combinations, when you're both, obviously you can have different variations on being male and female, but at the same time, you can only be male, female, both, or neither on a spectrum. So for me, and the same as sexuality. You can be heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, or asexual. That's it. I can't see any other need for any other category.
No, and I think that the majority of trans people and the majority of homosexual people, will agree with those ideas. It's just a very noisy minority of radical activists who are unhappy with these very clear, simple, appropriate definitions. and want to, you know, expand the vocabulary. So there's pansexual, and I don't know all of the terms, non-binary and stuff like that, you know.
Non-binary is okay because it just means you're not male or female.
Yeah, I suppose that does make sense, but you know, there is an ever-expanding list of very much made-up words. You know?
It is. It's crazy, because basically your elements are masculinity and femininity. You combine them. You can combine them so that you don't really feel one or the other, or so that you feel a bit of both, or you're predominantly one and predominantly the other. Yeah, but that's it. You know, the elements are masculinity and femininity. There's no other gender that you're it's like colours. You know, you've got blue and green. Yeah. You've got blue and yellow. You can get green, but you still got blue and yellow.
Blue and yellow. Yeah. So that's a nice analogy. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it works for me, gender. It's not. But the most striking thing is that given masculinity is a gender, we're either we ignore it, or we sort of pathologize it now, and that just seems incredible how we've got to that point.
It does.
Considering it's half of humanity, and it's masculinity is within all people, including
exactly.
It's not like it's just, you know, you can't say. The same people are saying gender is all this complex thing and there isn't a pure gender anyway, and then they're slagging off all men as if there was a pure gender. You know, so you can't have it both ways and say, well, everyone's equal and no one's really any different. We're all just a mix of things. But by the way, all men are bastards. It's kind of a weird mixture of things.
I know. It's quite awesome to behold how people can, you know, maintain these completely contradictory ideas all at once.
Yeah.
I think there's just, you know, an enormous social pressure to do so.
I think
it's kind of like the Cultural Revolution in China. You know, people had to maintain all of these contradictory ideas, and that, you know, the revolution was good and the state was good, and that this was all a good idea and it was liberating people, and also that people couldn't think freely and that was dangerous and they must be punished.
Well, it's Orwellian. It's completely totalitarian.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the whole thing has just come together now with race as well. You've got gender, race, and
I know.
There's a whole sort of political kind of mixture, which ends up almost being sort of, there's a kind of weird Marxist anarchist quality to it as well. It's all kind of just mad.
I know.
Anti-democratic, completely anti-democratic.
Oh yeah, and anti-common sense.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think it's, you know, illegitimate really, because I think that while all of these rules are kind of being enforced by these moral kind of gatekeepers, the vast majority of people are kind of just going, what?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all happened so fast.
Yeah. And when it comes to actual votes, that's why these results go against the expectations of this very sort of weird elite pseudo-intellectual minority who on the sort of left, I'm not really a left or right in my politics.
No, me neither.
I don't even think the left and right means anything anymore. I'm just for democracy and freedom and empowerment of individuals through collective responsibility, whatever you call that. That's me. But you've just got a bunch of people on the left, whatever that means now, trying to sort of control the debate in media and politics. And it's sort of feminism is part of that, because it was a useful thing. It was a human rights thing for women, which is a fine thing, but it's just morphed now into totalitarianism, where it was a useful thing because there were human rights issues for women. But of course, even in its early days, they were false narratives, because a lot of men didn't have the vote either. So the suffrage narrative is incorrect, because it implies that men all had the vote and it was a man's world. Well, half the men didn't have the vote and they were all dying to protect the freedom of the vote. in 1914. So these narratives all catch hold, and that is the power. You know, those are the things that are socially constructed, these narratives. But obviously gender is not socially constructed, because it's a universal aspect of the human species in every culture. And you can see, as a scientist, you can see patterns across all cultures, which means it's not social, because if it was social, you get much more variation. You know, it's just obvious. In every country, men are doing the sort of jobs where they're more likely to die because they're doing dangerous things and they're taking risks. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it needs to be respected that they're doing it, rather than men should be opening up and more vulnerable, and men are bad for being macho, when you still want them going down repairing the sewage works and the mines and and all the dangerous things. You still want men doing that. It's a kind of weird social hypocrisy.
Oh yes, isn't it just? I mean, you know, the sort of the left are breaking my heart at the moment, because I'm like you, I'm not left or right. What I want is for there to be two moderate, reasonable, healthy, rational, you know, left and right parties, because we're essentially in a two-party system. So you know, you can leave it at that. I'd be satisfied with that. You know, having debates, you know, one wins one election, one wins another election, trying out good ideas, being able to talk to each other, you know, because like even 10 years ago, the average left winger, I would think I would be able to have a rational, pleasant conversation with. And now they're becoming like just so incredibly rare, because the average leftist today, if you say, well, you know, I'm not entirely convinced that we should have open borders or something like that, will go, oh my God, you're a bigot, you're prejudiced, how could you possibly believe that, you know? And it's sad. And, you know, I don't want, although I voted Conservative in the last general election, I don't want, you know, a Conservative government for the rest of time. And I don't think all of their policies are the best. You know, I'm very much into reforming the criminal justice system in particular, and pursuing rehabilitation and holistic kind of approaches to healing these people who, you know, I mean, if you look at the statistics, they are people who've been through serious traumas, you know, people who often didn't have a father in the home when they were growing up, you know, and all of these kind of, you know, statistics show us that there are needs that they have, and if the needs could be addressed, then we might be able to build people who can contribute to society instead of harming society.
Well, I mean, yeah, my approach on that is a public health one, which is that if you look at all the people in the criminal justice system, you'll realise why they ended up there, and we need to prevent that happening.
Yeah.
Because for the people already in the criminal justice system, you can't, for some of them it's a bit late because they're so damaged. I mean,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
I would make this point to anyone who, you know, there are some really good people who are doing therapy with very damaged people in prisons, but you can do that you've got to always try to push that and do as much of that as you can. But obviously, let's think about some of the things that dangerous criminals have done such awful things to other people, that if they ever got healthier and became more empathic, they couldn't live with what they'd done. You see what I mean? So therapy would be kind of crazy. You know, if you really understood what you'd done, you'd never do it. You know, you couldn't live with having done it. But obviously,
no, it would cause kind of
too much to live with.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. It's like you know, soldiers. I read somewhere that, you know, what causes, I think it might have been Jordan Peterson actually, what causes post-traumatic stress disorder for a lot of soldiers is not what they've seen, but what they've done.
Absolutely. Oh no, and I've worked with PTSD a lot, and that's exactly right. It's It's the feeling of what you've witnessed, what you've been party to, and what you've personally done. You know, so I've worked with soldiers who've seen things. I've worked with people who've seen stuff that isn't military, but yeah, absolutely. It's because we do have a conscience, you know, it's because people are human that they can become damaged, that they can do damage because they're so hurt by what's happened to them that they then hurt other people, because human beings are vulnerable, that they can, you couldn't want to hurt anyone else if you weren't vulnerable.
No.
All hurt that you do to other people, it is based on dealing with your own wounds and you're taking them out on someone else. And that's the basis of psychology. You're trying to help someone recover from their own wounds and begin to take it out less on other people. The therapist is somebody who is prepared to put up with that relationship because it's a relationship designed to help one person rather than most relationships are two-person based.
Mm-hmm.
Therapist is saying, well, I'm in this relationship but to help you. It's not an equal relationship. I'm here to help you. You're not here to help me. But also I do have more power. But then that's the power to do good. You know, you can't do any good or harm without power. You can't even change a light bulb without the power to do it. So power isn't a bad thing. Power can be abused. So therapy is really about a relationship which corrects the damage of the past or processes it. And that's trauma, can be anything. But so that's the work I've done. And I've been doing that way before I got into men's issues. Men's issues only came into my life when I was in my 40s, which is amazing. Which just says how blind we are to them. That I wasn't trained to think about them at all.
No.
And I was already in my 40s before I even thought about it.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for inviting me to speak to you. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And thanks to everybody for listening.